I never met him in person. Never, but it was 2014 on Match.com. And we just started corresponding, and then we exchanged numbers, and he just kept calling me, calling. But like I said, every time I'd be like, okay, well, it's the weekend. Like, are we going to like meet up? Like, you only live 40 minutes from me and you live by the beach. So like perfect date, you know what I mean? And he's like, oh, babe, you have to understand, like, I'm a sales manager. Like, I work bell to bell. And ironically, I work for a car dealership. So I understand bell to bell. I get it. It's a lot. It's 6 days a week, and it's morning, noon, and night. And I thought, oh, okay, well, I don't know when I'm going to meet this guy, because his days off are not going to be my days off. So I just took it like that's why we're not physically meeting, because of his job, and then his dad got sick. But again, this was I want to say a month, 4 to 6 weeks, something like that. And then after that, I started saying, like, am I ever going to see you, or what? Like, what's the deal? Oh yeah, you will. And then the last conversation was, as soon as I get back from visiting my dad, then I can pay you back and we'll see each other. We can go out. And of course, that never happened.
I'm Donna Andersen, and this is True Lovefraud Stories. Back in 2014, Kathy Fishman of Florida was coming out of a 20-year marriage and a contentious divorce. She had 2 daughters. One was a young adult and out of the house, and her youngest was about to start college. Kathy's coworkers kept telling her that, now that she was single, she should join a dating site. Reluctantly, she agreed and signed up for Match.com.
I don't even think I was on the site for a couple of days, maybe. I know it wasn't long, and he was the first one to reply to me, and he sent me this whole, page about himself, where he lived, what he did, his background, everything about him. And I guess obviously we exchanged numbers. He called, we started interacting.
The man said his name was Giovanni Carlo Malozzi. He told Kathy to call him Gino.
He lived down by the beach and I was more inland. Anyway, so it was difficult for us to meet up, if you will. There was always a snag. So fast forward a few weeks went by. We spoke on the phone a lot. He, at the time, was supposedly a regional sales manager at a Ford car dealership, which I knew the dealership, and I called the dealership to confirm. And he did work there. So I thought, okay, well, at least he is who he says he is. So I had a little bit more trust for a minute. And next thing I know, and he was calling me several times a day, every day. Every night, the whole thing. So now I get a phone call from him out of the blue. Hey, I have to go visit my sick dad in North Carolina or Georgia. I don't remember which state. But one of those states. And he's like, I'm driving, and I promise as soon as I get back, we're going to meet up. And meanwhile, also, I was getting 10,000 pictures and photos and all kinds of stuff from him. So he goes, I guess, to visit this sick dad. And he calls me at work. I want to say he left on a Friday. This was like a Monday. And he calls me at work and he's like, oh, I'm freaking out. So I'm like, what's the matter? He's like, I'm on my way back home from visiting my sick dad, and my car broke down and they're going to have to tow it. And I'm going to need $500 to have it fixed. And is there any way that you could just lend me that money? Because I left in such a whirl visiting my dad. I was such in a frenzy. I don't even have a credit card with me. And I was like really reluctant. And I'm like, Gino, that's a lot of money. And he's like, I know, I'm sorry. He's like, and he even mentioned, I don't remember what it was, but he even mentioned like what was wrong with the car. And then, but he was on the highway, so he had to get a tow, and that was part of the fee, and blah, blah, blah. And they were going to fix it the next day, and he was going to get home. And he had a bonus check waiting for him at the dealership. And if I wanted, he was going to make a phone call, and I could go over there to the dealership, and he would authorize me picking up his check. That's how deep he went with it. And of course, what do you think I said? No, you don't have to do that. So I'm like, all right, fine. I'm like, I'll get it to you. But like I told you, I don't even remember how I sent it to him. I know it wasn't Venmo or Money App because they didn't have those. At least I didn't have those in 2014. So I don't remember how I sent it, but I did. And he did call me when he got back and told me all about the repair in detail. And I said, okay, well, enough for anything, but I need to kind of know when you're going to give me that money back, because that was my kids' child support money. And I was living on my own. My daughter was living with me. She had just started going to college. And I was like, so, don't do the wrong thing. Oh, no. I'm going to get it to you. I'm going to work tomorrow.
Well, days turned into weeks. Kathy was still talking to Gino, but he did not come up with her money.
At this point, I was only talking to him because I was trying to get my money. And I knew at that point, when he was making excuses for 2-3 days, he made an excuse about the bonus check and it didn't go through and it wasn't what he thought it was going to be. I mean, one story led to another, to another, to another. And I was like, listen, are you going to give me my money back or not? Like, that's where we're going with this. And I said, apparently you're not. So you need to lose my phone number and like, don't ever call me again. And he was like, wow, you are so rude. I'm going through such a hard time and this is how you act. Like, he turned it on me, And I was like, listen, buddy. And we got into an argument on the phone. I basically did tell him, you know what, not for anything, but I've been married to a hot-headed Italian for 20 years. Like, your bark does not frighten me, like, at all. So how are you going to get me my money back? I said, because I will show up at your job. And I think he hung up on me or something. I don't know. I don't really recall. But then he just didn't call me. And I'm pretty sure he blocked my number because I couldn't get in touch with him. His phone would always go straight to voicemail. And then I tried, I want to say a little bit of time passed, not much, maybe a couple of weeks. And I called the job, the Ford place, and they said he no longer works there. And I was like, of course he doesn't. But so I knew at that point, I'm done. I've lost my money. Okay, it was $500. Maybe that's not a lot to some, but to me, it was huge. And I've never, ever in my life done anything like that before.
Kathy was scammed. Gino had disappeared, and she thought she would never hear from him again. She was mistaken.
This guy had the audacity to call me at my job like 2 months later, like out of the blue, and called my work number. So when I answered my phone at work, it was him. And he was like, hey, stranger, are you calmed down now? Or something stupid like that. Like, I wanted to give you some time to cool off. And I was like, I don't know who you are or what your joke is. I said, but you stop calling me. Don't call my work. Don't call my phone. Don't call my cell phone. Don't ever call me again. And I hung up on him. And if I could be mistaken, but I want to say it was even later, maybe even 6 months after that, he called me again at my job. And I think I hung up on him. I remember there was no long-term conversation. And then I was at that job for 6 years, and I left because I had moved out of the county. And somebody from my work, because I kept in touch with a lot of people, told me that he had called asking for me, even way after that. When that was, I don't recall. I want to say it was probably within that same year, and said she no longer works here. But they told me that, he had called asking for me. And I thought, wow, this guy don't quit. He steals from people and then he calls you like there's nothing wrong, like everything's normal. But never brought the money up again, and thought I was the most rudest person for going after him for $500 when he was down and out.
Kathy ruefully accepted that she'd fallen for a con artist and her money was gone. But that didn't mean she had to go away quietly. Periodically, since 2014, she would search Facebook, Instagram, and other social media sites looking for Giovanni Malozzi's profiles. And every single time, she found him.
I started commenting, and I would say stuff like, hey, beware of this guy. He scams women for money. You better watch out. Now, granted, I did not know about anybody else at this point. I knew nothing about anything. That was just me saying that, like, beware of this guy. He'll try to take money from you. And it was usually within 10 minutes of me, I would probably get maybe 10 or 15 comments, and I would message these people and reply, and he would block me.
In 2019, during one of her random searches, Kathy found Gino again on Facebook. This time, his background photo was a church.
He wrote, like, loving God, my life is turned around. And, my first thought was, well, you know what? Good. I'm glad if he's turning his life around, because that's good. Maybe he'll, not be such an idiot.
Gino was on the staff of the church, which was located in the Las Vegas area. Kathy wondered if the church knew of his history. She decided to call the church and report that a member of their staff had stolen money from her. She also decided to call the police.
I did call Henderson County Police, and I did give them his name, and I said what church it was, which they told me they were familiar with the church. And I said, this guy is scamming women for money. I said, I'm in Florida. I know there's nothing you can really do. This happened to me in 2014. I said, but every now and then I try to find this guy on social media, and I just try to warn people.
Kathy continued her online search and came across a YouTube video entitled Testimony of Giovanni Unsaved by Grace. In it, Carlo Giovanni Malozzi tells his story of redemption to an unidentified pastor. He says that he was born in Colombia and his mother, father, and brother were killed. He was adopted by an Italian family in New York, but his adoptive mother was abusive. The family didn't want him, so when he was 13, they turned him over to foster care. Some of his shelter parents talked to him about God, and after many troubled years, he accepted God in his life and wanted to share his testimony with others.
You have no idea. I wanted to go through that YouTube and choke that. It was terrible. I was so angry. Listen, I'm a believer myself, and I thought, what person in their right mind is going to stand behind and hide behind God? Like, meanwhile, you're a thief, you're a scammer, and you have to be brazen to stand before God. The fact that he does not think that he's going to answer for this blows my mind, to be honest. And whoever that pastor was in that YouTube, I tried to message them but you can't leave a message on YouTube. Like, I couldn't do it on that. Like, I don't know how old that is, and I don't even know if that church still exists, but I thought, where's the discernment? How come people are not figuring this guy out? All these years it's been going on, and who knows before me even. How long? Who even knows? Has this guy been doing this his whole life? I don't know. How come he's still walking the streets? I don't get it.
In May of 2023, as I was researching the Giovanni Malozzi story for this podcast, Kathy happened to conduct another one of her random searches.
And one day I was at work and I was like, let me see if that jerk is on social media. And boom, wouldn't you know, I found him again. So I started doing the same thing. And that's when I got on the page, because his page was public and he has, thousands of friends and mostly females. But when I opened his Facebook page, I saw Linda's brother-in-law's post attached to his wall saying, beware, this guy is a scammer. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this has happened to other people now too. It's still going on. So I started making comments on his page, and wouldn't you know, he blocked me immediately. It was probably 4 minutes. But before he blocked me, I screenshotted Linda's brother-in-law's page, his post, and I reached out to him on Messenger. I told him, you don't know who I am, but I saw your post on Gino Malozzi's Facebook wall, and I sent him that whole message, and he got right back to me. And he said, wow, this, whatever. He said, this happened to my sister-in-law. It's terrible. And then I said, please give her my number and have her call me. And her and I chatted. And I was like, girl, I know mine was only 500 and I know yours was a lot more. But if there's anything I can do to help you or anybody else in this mess, I would love to see this man be held accountable.
So, looking back, how was Gino Malozzi able to convince Kathy to send him the money?
He was just so believable, is all I can say. I had no reason. At that point, he hadn't given me a reason to not believe what he was saying, if that makes better sense. So I just believed him. He's very, very convincing. I will say that. And obviously he is, because all these years later, he's still doing it. I have to tell you, I'm shocked he's not in jail. I'm shocked. I think it's a disgrace.
I'm Donna Andersen, and this is True Lovefraud Stories. To hear expert commentary related to this story, become a premium subscriber. I interview a private investigator who explains why online background checks may not deliver the information you need to protect yourself. You'll also get access to my weekly interactive podcast, Love Fraud Live, in which I answer your questions. Okay, so how did this experience of encountering Giovanni affect you?
Well, obviously, there was no dating sites for me after that. I was angry, and I thought, it's bad enough, you go through a pretty hardcore divorce. Now, how am I going to trust anybody? So it was a big issue for trust, very big issue. And, the only thing I can explain that to you is time. Time helped. It just kind of eventually started to wear away, but I knew better. I thought, okay, they say you live and you learn, and you learn from your mistakes. And I knew, oh my God, I would never, ever, any man that would remotely be interested in me is not going to ask me for money. They're not. And thank God it's never happened to me since. And I've been in relationships, very happy ones.
True Lovefraud Stories is produced by lovefraud.com. I'm the author of lovefraud.com and the investigator for this story. Engineering is by Terry Kelly. To learn how to recognize and recover from everyday sociopaths, visit lovefraud.com. And for more information about this story, other great stories, or if you'd like to share your story, visit podcasts.lovefraud.com.